And 3, 2, 1. Always a delay. Always a delay. All right. Welcome back to the Fit File podcast, where we talk about anything and everything sports tech related. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of summer cycling technology that came out, both on the indoor and outdoor space. So we've got stuff to talk about from Zipp, SRAM, Elite, as well as Garmin and Tacx. There's just a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today.
Absolutely. It's catch-up time. Just like last week was catch-up time on wearables, now we are in catch-up time on the cycling side. And maybe we'll throw some other random stuff in there as well, both cycling and non-cycling alike.
There is definitely still a lot of wearable chat that we have to talk about, so we still need to catch up on the Amazfit Helio band or strap that just came out. And then there's also some recent news from Whoop that just landed like 10 minutes ago, while we're actually filming this episode, which
Spicy time.
Spicy time, exactly. So yeah, Whoop, we thought Whoop was maybe out of the news. No, they're back in it at this point.
They keep finding ways to like get the fire going, right? It's like the fire is like dying down. Everyone's left the campfire, just some embers there, and they're like, hold on. Poke. Let's put some more gas on there.
Yeah.
And and I would say when we talk about that eventually, some interesting takes there, right? Because I would say in a span of 30 minutes, I switched sides onto whose side I was on the debate of this whole firestorm, whoops or not whoops, in a very short period of time.
Yeah, no, actually, I totally hear it, because Whoop also was in the news where Will, the CEO, he was on Rich Roll's podcast, and I don't know, it was kind of interesting timing about that podcast, and there, you know what? To be honest with you, I really appreciated a lot of the things that he did say on that podcast, but again, you know, I think it was pretty interesting timing all around for him to be on there. So, anyways, we're gonna loop back to that in our next episode, but just a reminder really quick for those of you listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we are also on YouTube, where you can switch back and forth between the video version as well as the audio version. And with the video version, you get to see not only our faces, but we'll also have pretty B-roll and stuff like that about the actual products that we're talking about on here as well. So just choose your not poison, choose your pleasure.
Candy.
Candy.
Dessert.
Oh, choose your candy. There you go. Exactly.
Yes.
Right. So speaking of candy, so the first thing that we should talk about are going to be some new wheels that came out from Zipp. So Zipp came out with some new 303 SWs and 353 NSWs with built-in tire pressure sensor. So this is basically taking their Tire Whiz technology that they've had that usually lives outside of the valve or basically outside of the rim, and then putting that into a pair of Zipp wheels with this little like cartridge that inserts in there. And so the advantage of something like this is that you'll be able to monitor your tire pressure in real time from your bike computer, the actual SRAM Access app, and then there's even an LED on the outside where you can see if you're in and out of range of tire pressure. And this is certainly, like, in terms of like bike technology, this is that 1% / top like 0.5% technology sort of thing going on here. So it also comes at a price, where with the 303 SWs, the ones that I've been testing, so those are, I think, around $2,200 for the set. And then the 353 NSWs, those are like over $4,000, I believe, or so for the set. So, you know, again, like, this is top tier technology, and it's really to eke out that last 0.5% of gains. And, you know, I think from my standpoint, I think it's really just more about, it's not necessarily about performance. Well, it can be about performance, but I think it's just more about convenience overall.
Totally, yeah. I'd say for me, it is purely the convenience. And it's funny because I have a long history in using their tire pressure sensors over the years. I kind of go in and out of when it's connected and functioning correctly, and then when I forget to change the battery and it doesn't work for 6 to 8 months or something. And every time I have it, I'm like, this is really handy. And then when I don't have it, it's like, I wish it was here, but I'm too lazy to install it, or whatever the case is, right? Because in the past, you would basically use a valve core removal tool to take out the valve core, and you stick at the top there, and you got to make sure it's all tightened. And then sometimes that can be a bit finicky, depending on the particular tube that you had or the tire setup that you had. In this case, it's potentially finicky in a very different direction because you have it built into the wheel itself, right? So when something goes wrong with that, then you've got a whole different ball game to get into. We get into that in just a second. But in terms of having tire pressure, it's just really handy when you're out on the road. You're like, am I going slow because I'm flat or because I'm tired or because of road or whatever the heck is? And that has been handy to be able to look at that. And so I appreciate it. I don't think it's worth the price as an integrated package, like to buy this wheel just for that. Like if you want the air pressure sensor, just go buy the air pressure sensors to standalone
totally.
and stick them on whatever wheel that you want. But I can see how this is, like classic SRAM across the board of, taking this technology and starting to integrate it into all the different pieces they have in their lineup. And that's what they're really, really good at.
So for convenience for me, I actually really appreciate the fact that before I go out on a ride, that I can just check my tire pressure really, really easily just with those LEDs on the outside where, and I think that really where this is playing an important role actually is the fact that these are also hookless rims. So with that, there's definitely a limited tire selection at that point, but you also have to be really careful about tire pressures too. So that's actually where I'm really finding this handy is the fact that, I can just find my ideal, or I can set my ideal pressure in the SRAM Access app beforehand, or you can even do this with your bike computer, but with a compatible bike computer. But then, when you actually just go to inflate your tires, you can actually check on that. But I think, the same thing goes for when you're riding where you'll actually be able to kind of like, you have one of those moments like, why am I going so slow? Is it a headwind or is my tire like really flat or something like that? So I've really been appreciating them for sure. And in terms of the actual like ride feel of which ones have you been riding? Have you been riding the
I'm on the NSWs. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. They're fantastic light wheels. They're Zipp wheels, but yeah, you bring up a good fact that it's really about like SRAM bringing in a lot of that technology like into one. But I don't know, like you were saying though, it's like the existing or the latest generation TireWiz tire pressure sensors. Those are actually very clean looking already. So this is for somebody like who is just going to go out and purchase a brand new set of Zipp wheels. Like for everyone else, if you're happy with your wheels, just get the tire pressure sensors. And, the nice thing about the tire pressure sensors too, is that you can put those on nearly any other carbon wheel too.
Yeah. I would say when you move to this system though, whether with integrated or non-integrated, you do need to consider what happens when things go wrong as a critical part of your bike as you leave the door, right? So in other words, if you need to repair a flat in some capacity, in this case, if the tire is simply not holding air anymore because it's tubeless, then you need to make sure that you've considered what's going to go in that hole and then how that's going to be dealt with after the fact, right? Like you can't just go out there and not have a plan for that, because if you don't have a plan for that, then you've got this gap that's sitting there. And so anyways, things to keep in mind.
Well, I think that brings a good point is that you still can use normal tubes in this. Sure, if you do end up getting a flat, you can still totally use a normal tube in this. But if you still want the tire pressure sensing, SRAM/Zipp does have a replacement tube with a compatible valve in it that I believe runs around like €40 or more or so. It's like, it's not a cheap tube. So, but again, like, this is for that person that really wants that just like bleeding edge type technology. Yeah. All right. So next up, let's talk about something that I think is a lot more accessible and super, super exciting, actually, from my standpoint, is that they also brought out 2 new group sets. So SRAM brought out the new Rival and Force group sets. There's actually 4 different group sets here. So there's both a Road, Force, and Rival, and then there's a new Explore, Gravel, Force, and Rival group sets. And this is bringing down a ton of red technology down to their lower price points, where with the Explore Gravel group sets, these are bringing down the 13-speed technology that they brought down with red, or they originally brought out with red. And then there's also a whole bunch of changes to the shifter and brake ergonomics when it comes to the shifter brake levers. And one more thing would be also to the braking power that comes along with those groups. So I've been testing the Force Road, and gosh, I have the previous generation Force, and I think there's some pretty considerable upgrades here all around.
Definitely. It's funny because I swapped out on my bike from previous generation Force to the new current generation, right? And so it was an exact like swap just right across the board. And yeah, it's the braking being the big one, and of course the difference in the ergonomics of the handles. But as you said, it's ultimately bringing those pieces down from SRAM Red. And this is, again, like SRAM is probably the most predictable company in the sports tech segment in terms of how they handle release cycles and upgrades and bringing technology down. Like, it's super obvious what was going to happen next. And in some ways, I would say, I still have yet to get my review out on this, but if I was to put a review, and I probably wouldn't use this title because it almost seems too marketing-y, gimmicky, but I would say like perfectly boring is like the best.
Wait, you wouldn't
best,
call it
like,
you wouldn't call it Red Killer?
You're going early, aren't you? I see how this works. There's probably some truth to that too, though, to be honest. But
actually,
no,
go ahead. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, like it just works, right? I think we're at the point on Groupsets now where things just work, and you will always have a portion of the population, and not just in cycling, but in anything, who is self-identifies as a weight weenie, right, and focuses on the grams, and for them, go for red, right, whatever. But otherwise, it's the same tech inside, right? It's the exact same stuff, just at a cheaper price point with slightly heavier components than red that therefore cost less, right? Like, it all works so well, and there really hasn't been some magical shift in either SRAM or Shimano, for that matter, in terms of these group sets in a long time, right? It's just taking technology, incrementally improving it, and technology that is well proven, well understood, and well established. And as we're seeing right now in the Tour de France, used across, both camps, or Shimano or SRAM, on, all the pro teams without any issues. Like, this is about as good as you get when it comes to just tech that simply works.
Well, we talked about this, I believe last year when you came out here to Colorado, or maybe it was like a year and a half ago. I can't even remember when that was, but you borrowed a bike that had Apex on it, their lowest level Axis group. And, I have an Apex group as well on one of my bikes. And I got to tell you, like, Apex is awesome. Like, I mean, for their lowest price point group, it works so well. And, just like you're saying, it just works. And this is one of those things with SRAM where they almost make their stuff too good, in a sense, where there's not necessarily a reason. I don't want to say there's not necessarily a reason to upgrade. Like, if you want those upgrades, which I think they make a difference, but it's not like a night and day difference where you have to have the better thing. It's like my old Force group, it's totally fine and it still just works, but I certainly do appreciate all these upgrades for sure, like on these new group sets too.
And maybe one of the most practical upgrades here is simply the addition of the bonus button for people that have bike computers with a bike belt, right? So the ability to do the dingling from the handlebars, just by pressing a button and have it trigger an Edge 1050 bike bell or a Hammerhead bike bell, that kind of stuff is just, it's super nice to have. And once you have it, you're like, this is great. At the same time, if you don't have it, you just tap the screen and it dings, right?
going back to the Zipp wheels though, where you can still get the tire whiz pressure sensors, you can still do the digital bell ding on compatible bike computers with the SRAM blips. So you don't necessarily have to have those bonus buttons, which, the bonus buttons, I've been really thinking a lot about those lately, is that being that they are on the top of the shifters there, you kind of do have to reach out and press those buttons where, blips, if you have those mounted underneath your handlebar or somewhere on your handlebar, those are, I don't know, I almost tend to use blips way more than the actual bonus buttons on the shifters themselves.
Indeed, that's something we talked about, I think, last year too, with those bonus buttons. And that, I think when I went to the media camp sort of thing that had every journalist there said the same. This is the first time that everyone had seen the bonus buttons on SRAM Red. And everyone kind of agreed that the placement was a little bit awkward in terms of that little bit extra reach, no matter how big your hand size was. And we all kind of wished it was just a little bit different spot. But they said, and I get this opinion, I disagree with it, but I get it, that the core reason they didn't make it in an easier to reach spot is that they were afraid people that were sprinting might press the button in a default configuration that would change gears. So you imagine you're sprinting for the line, and all of a sudden you just drop down into like the easiest gear or something like that. So I understand their thinking. I disagree with the ultimate execution, right? I just wish the button was in a more practical spot.
I think you still could have it on the inside of the hood, like right in the right in the middle portion, like a little bit below your thumb right there, because even with like grasping that entire, handle right there, it's like there, I don't think you would necessarily press it right there, but I don't know. Again, like I totally get the justification for that. So, and then one last thing about these is that, yes, they did trickle down a lot of that technology to these groups, but this also did come at a price increase too. But, I think that was probably one of the number one complaints about these groups, is that they did increase in price from the previous generation. But I don't know, at the same time, like, tell me what kind of technology, like what kind of new generation technology comes out where they bring down a lot of more advanced technology where the price doesn't increase.
And the reality is that for most people, you're not buying a group set off the shelf, right? So the vast majority, the consumers for this product are buying it as part of a bike. And in that scenario, the price increase is either absorbed or sideswiped depending on where the bike came from, right? So a lot of these price increases are due to tariffs. So if you were buying it directly in the US as a component, then you're buying it essentially from, SRAM importing it from one of the countries that's tariff. Versus if you're buying a bike, then in many cases that transaction happens outside the US first, and then you're paying effectively the tariff depending on where the bike is from, as opposed to that. So the group set is installed somewhere outside the US and then pulled in. But in either case, the pricing for group sets is sort of like list pricing for, Boeing and Airbus planes, right? There's a list that you have that, a Boeing 777 costs $300 million. The airlines never pay that. It's the same thing with the OEMs for the bike industry, right? They're paying a much, 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 much lower price for the group set when they buy it than when you buy it.
Oh yeah, completely, for sure. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, great job, SRAM, on those new groups. Let's go ahead and switch on to the inside portion side of the cycling world. So we now have some new smart trainers to talk about, or at least a new smart trainer, but some new smart trainer accessories as well. Oh, and a new bike computer too. So first up, let's talk about the new Elite Rivo. Did I pronounce that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. So anyways, this is Elite's new budget level trainer replacing the Suito smart trainer. So basically they're going to have 3 different smart trainers now. They're going to have their top end Justo, they're going to have the Avanti, as well as this new Rivo. And this is coming in at 499 euros, but I guess there's no US pricing yet, correct?
No, they were waiting for the July 9th decision, which obviously has come and gone around tariffs. And now that sounds like it's an August 1st decision. So they're probably just going to kick the can down the road till August and see what happens and go from there. But yeah, so this, as you noted, is designed to be that replacement for Suito, but interestingly is a blend of Suito and Avanti components. And so what they did is they took what is essentially the flywheel and inertia components of Suito, but then blended it with all of the tech pieces, but also the braking elements of Avanti, meaning that it will feel, from like an inertial standpoint, similar to Suito, so budget oriented, but it has a bit more of the power from a braking standpoint, so the resistance side of it, as you would see on the Avanti, which is their mid-range trainer. And then it has all of the electronic side of it as well. So that includes things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, but notably not ANT+. Which, this is not the first time we've seen this, right? We saw Decathlon skip out an ANT+ last fall or so on their budget, D100, but that was priced in the 200s or so, versus this is a bit higher. And Elite's reasoning here, I actually don't have a problem with per se. And the reason is because their execution is better than Decathlon's. So Elite argued, correctly so, that they're not putting ANT+ in there because ANT+, of course, back in January announced that there are effectively disbanding is the best way to put it. They're not technically disbanding. They're basically stopping certification. They're stopping all these things. And so they're stopping that. And as a result, companies will start looking at alternatives. And so in Elite's case, they say, hey, we've got Wi-Fi in there. We've got 3 channels of Bluetooth available for you. And then within that, we're doing FTMS as well as the Bluetooth power solo and Bluetooth speed and cadence solo. So that means that you can cover any connectivity to a watch on Bluetooth, which is every watch supports Bluetooth power today, or you could do Bluetooth speed and cadence, or you could do Bluetooth FTMS, and then you also have Wi-Fi. That's different from Decathlon, which didn't have all those channels available to you on Bluetooth, nor do they have the solo power side of it. And the reason people care about the solo power side of it is for piping it into their watch, whether it be Suunto or Apple or Coros or whatever you want, to be able to account for training load and recovery stats. So unless you have some way to get it into your watch or other ecosystem, then that's a bit tough, even if you're still on Zwift. Now, of course, in the case of Garmin, they pull files in from Zwift and whatnot. So this is really for most other platforms. So I actually don't have a big issue with this. I prefer using the ANT+ connection in most cases purely from like a product reviewer standpoint. It makes it easier to like deal with stuff after the fact. But from a consumer standpoint, like I'm almost always connecting on Bluetooth for Zwift or whatever it is application I'm using on FTMS.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that someone should be aware of when purchasing this trainer if you have a preference for ANT+, but I think for like 99% of people out there, it's probably not going to be that big a deal. So did I also notice that it doesn't require wall power to use this trainer?
Correct, it does not. So I actually went back and forth with them on this just to make sure there is no wall power required, but it's essentially doing that at a given gradient. So then it's almost like an old school magnetic trainer there. So you can't dynamically change things. It's just going to be at a set gradient, and then your speed will drive the resistance towards it. So you have to increase your speed accordingly to get resistance. But that would work just fine as a warm-up type scenario.
Well, and I think that's actually what is a really good use case for this trainer is going to be like a portable trainer that you can actually bring with you for your warm-up before your race or something along those lines, because I think that kind of goes back to the Sweet Toe, where one of my favorite things about the Sweet Toe is just how compact and small it was, where, that essentially was a great travel trainer where I could just like toss it in my car. It wouldn't really take up that much room. And, it just was fantastic for travel. So, and I think one last thing I want to bring up about this trainer is that it looks really, really good. Like they nailed the design on it. It looks so, so good. And it's kind of funny with elite trainers. I find that elite trainers are kind of hit and miss when it comes to the design. And I know they put a lot of work into the design where they work with like a design firm, like an Italian design firm about all these things. But I think some can be like just absolutely stunning, where some are just like, I'm not so sure about that. And what I find interesting about elite trainers is that, or elite products in general, is that they have some really compelling designs, but the cohesiveness of the design styles between their products it can be kind of mismatched oftentimes, where, if you look at like Wahoo's products or even Tacx's products, like we'll bring up here in just one second, it's like they have a really, really cohesive design style. And Elite, again, like I know they put a lot of work into each product, but I feel like they can be a little bit disjointed sometimes in terms of looks.
Indeed. I think in the past especially, I think this sort of completes the trio. We can put up the picture right now of this trio shot that I had at Eurobike. I took all three at once, where you can see the Justo 2, which came up first, then the Avanti, and then the Rivo. And it seems like they carry it through fairly well. Versus, like you said, in the past, it was like the Diretto was like this bulbish looking thing, right? Kind of like a little, I don't know, like a donut or something. And then the other ones were super square, and then you had their bike, which was like whole different level. We're talking the old bike, by the way, the 14,000 euro bike, not the new square.
Future Pista, I think is what it was called. Something
Fuller
like
Pista, I think something. Yeah. The super yacht bike. So yeah, I think they're finally starting to like have normalcy across the board on this, which is good. And it'll be interesting to see what they come out with the US dollar pricing on this. I think that'll be probably their toughest element as to whether or not they can deliver on something at $499. I mean, look, that's at the end of the day, if Elite isn't at essentially $499, and I say essentially, I mean at $499 or lower, then those sales will go to Jet Black, right? And they will go to Kicker Cores on sale. Like it's factually simple as that.
Now, where are these manufactured?
So these are manufactured in Europe. The Revos are.
So will tariffs actually affect that then?
Well, funny you asked that. Nobody knows. So in theory, if right now the current threat is what, 20 or 30% for the August 1st one, one against the EU. So that would be on par or higher than the current tariffs from most Asian countries. I mean, it's a complete roll of the dice, right? And again, tariffs have a huge number of classification exemptions and all sorts of stuff. And that's just one piece of it, right? So there's a blanket tariffs that are being applied that say everything from this country has a plus 10, 20, 30, whatever percent tariff on top of the existing bits. And then there's cutouts like we've seen for watches and phones and whatnot. That everyone's saying that's not going to apply here to trainers. So they're out of that one. But as to how these will impact the pricing, I would say if we're talking a 30% tariff on EU goods, then I would be surprised if Elite even bothers sending units to the US at all. Like I just don't I don't think they have the margin there compared to Jet Black producing in Asia, or even Wahoo producing in China, for the kicker core, for example, to be able to do that. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. So anyways, next up, let's talk about Tacx bringing virtual shifting finally to their Neo trainer. So basically this is going to be allowing for virtual shifting in Zwift with a Zwift click or play controllers in Zwift. And I would say it's simple as that, but there's two things about this. Is that first of all, this took forever to come out. So it's finally here. However, the actual shift feel is different than any other experience that's out there with Wahoo trainers as well as elite trainers. So basically what Tacx/Garmin has been able to do is that they've actually mimicked the shift feel with the magnetic resistance that they actually have within their trainers, where you actually feel like sort of a click or sort of like sort of that feel that you get with shifting with a real bike. And it's one of those like subtle but really, really nice things about it.
Indeed, and we've seen this done on the indoor bikes before, right? That same kind of like shift feel. But this is really the first time we've seen it applied to virtual shifting. And I think you got to remember when Zwift introduced virtual shifting, they had planned to essentially introduce it almost entirely on what was then their own trainer, but it was Jet Black trainer, right? And then that was expanded out to the kicker core, and then other Wahoo trainers, and then other companies, and Elite notably, and then now Garmin Tacx. And so what's interesting with that is that they designed it for that original trainer, right? And they've now had to like expand out to different things. So not only do we see different feels like you're just talking about there in terms of the execution of the actual click, but we're also seeing difference in the cassettes that they're offering for the Zwift cog, right? And so up until now, they had one Zwift cog configuration. And then with this, they've added a new Zwift cog configuration for both Elite and Tacx trainers. You can use the existing cog on an Elite and Tacx trainer just fine. In fact, I've got one literally sitting right there in front of me. But you won't have the range because it was designed for effectively a different flywheel ratio behind the scenes. So the one of Wahoo and Jet Black versus for Elite and Tacx, you want this different cogs to be able to get more flywheel range so you don't run out of power either the low or the high end.
And one more thing too to mention is that you still don't need a Zwift cog for virtual shifting. Like if you already have an existing cassette on your trainer, you can still just totally use that. So I think the only issue I think at this point is that if you do want to upgrade to Zwift virtual shifting, your upgrade options in terms of what controller you have are still a little bit limited, where you can either do this with the Zwift Play controllers, which are going to be the whole things with the like all the controller buttons and stuff like that. But the other option is the Zwift Click, but you have to buy that still with the cog. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Like, I feel like I could have got it like a year ago or maybe even 2 years ago when it was like, hey, we built all these bundles. We just want to get rid of the cog. But like at this point, why are they not selling just the click? Like I shouldn't have to have all this extra crap be shipped around and all the waste of all that to just have a Zwift click. Like it's not a very expensive component. Sell it for $29 or even $39 if you really want to. I don't know, something that's, I mean, this is a very low cost of goods item here that they should be going ahead and just almost giving away at this point.
Well, and that said, though, I have to say that the Zwift Click plus the Zwift Click plus cog combo or the Zwift Play controllers, they're still priced very reasonably for what they are. They're certainly not asking like this crazy premium for those. So it's one of those like I feel like, yeah, if you could just buy the click for $29 or $50, even $50 or something like that, that would be great. But yeah, in any case, finally that has come. What?
Speaking of premium, did you see the new H2O headphones, Zwift ones?
Okay, so I saw the brief news about those, but you're gonna have to fly with this one.
I'm not going to fly very far. Okay. I just wanted to tie that in because So Zwift announced, I think yesterday, the day before, something like that, these headphones with H2O, so audio. So they do audio products for a long time now, and they've done a lot of stuff, including waterproof headphones in the past and things like that. I tested some swim headphones from them like a decade ago, but they've got these ones that they've had some of their pros at the Tour de France on the time trial days. So last Wednesday and probably again on Friday, wearing these headphones. They're over-the-ear headphones. So some people have noted like that's going to be hot as balls, which As one who has worn over-the-ear headphones on trainers, yes, I would agree it'll probably be hot as balls. But they are totally sweat-proof. However, the premium aspect is that these are $249 headphones. So you need to be sure that they are going to actually survive all those trainer sessions. And as you and I both know, and you and I have both done, we have killed numerous electronic products that were supposedly indoor trainer friendly from our sweat.
When these headphones came out, I had two thoughts. First of all, just like you, I was like, I can't wear over-the-ear headphones with trainers, but I see so many people doing that. And I mean, I guess more power to you, but it's like, it feels like earmuffs like on my ears. Like, so the flip side to the argument though, is that with earbuds, so what happens with earbuds is that when you do sweat a lot and sweat can actually get into your ear canals, well, they can actually get into the actual speaker portion too, where they can kind of like mute out the speaker at that point too. Yeah. So it's kind of like, there are definitely two sides to that argument, but yeah, for me, it's like, it feels like earmuffs, and that's just not my bag for sure.
No, but I thought it was interesting. I would say visually they are very cool looking, and the fact that they match the in-game stuff is neat as well. And of course, the fact that they have them on Tour de France riders was a very clever little tie-in there, an announcement tie-in and all that kind of stuff. It's also the Tour de France, by the way, speaking of that, and tie-ins, is the sponsor of our podcast here, Precision Fuel and Hydration. You will have seen them and their bottles on many Tour de France riders on the men's side over the last couple of weeks, for the next week or so. And then on the women's side, starting in 2 weeks. I'll be there at the women's side of things as well to check things out and to see some of the behind-the-scenes bits from Precision Fuel and Hydration. And of course, beyond the pros is people like myself and my wife who use Precision Fuel and Hydration products for all of our adventures. I've got a 4-hour ride tomorrow in the heat. It'll be about 90 degrees. I think it's like 35 degrees Celsius. And we're going to be definitely fueling with Precision products, but focused on the heat aspect of it. In fact, one of the things I was just talking with them earlier today that they're doing right now is that if you call their sports scientists, not only will it help you plan out your fueling and kind of racing strategy there, and that's just basically a Zoom call that's totally free that you can do with them, but they'll also work with you on how to adapt that for hotter days and hotter temperatures. And so for this time of the summer when things are hot and spicy, ensuring that you have the products you need to not only get the fueling side of it, but the hydration side of it and the electrolytes aspect of it as well. Of course, if you don't want to talk to a person, you can do that online with their race intake planner to walk through all those pieces there. And then, of course, all their products are Informed Sport certified, all are vegan, all are 2-to-1 glucose fructose, and contain no artificial ingredients. You can visit the link down the bottom there to go ahead and save 15% on your first order. Thanks again to Precision Fuel and Hydration for sponsoring this episode.
Yep. Thanks again, everyone. So next up, let's talk about the other side of the bike, I guess you could say. So let's start to talk about the new Garmin Tacx Alpine. So this is their new gradient simulator, but it's a lot more than that. So this not only provides gradient simulation for simulating like hills and descents in your favorite or your compatible indoor cycling training platform, but it also provides steering in a compatible platform, but it also can accommodate for the 4.5 movement that comes on the Neo 3M trainers or the Neo 2T.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Wiggle. And then, but one more thing even is that it actually can also accommodate for the side-to-side movement on those trainers too. Now, when I first saw there you go, exactly. So when I first saw the news of this, I was like, cool, another gradient simulator. And I was like, all right, fine. It's going to be like, just like the kicker climb or the elite riser where, it'll just simulate those hills. And those definitely help kind of, I don't want to say simulate an outdoor environment, but they definitely help you keep you more engaged while you're riding, where it creates a little more, I guess you could say, stimulation while you're riding. And again, when I first saw this, I'm like, okay, cool. But when I actually rode with it and started riding with it, I was like, this is really good. Like, this is really, really good. And it's just really, I think it's just the execution of how they put all those things together into one.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting. There's a comparison chart I put in my written review, and I think my video review as well, that talks about kind of the 3 core products in this segment. So you have the Wahoo Kicker Climb, which was the first one, and then you have the Elite Riser, the second one that came in here, and then now you have the Tacx Alpine. And in the case of Garmin Tacx, they essentially took everything that everyone else has and did it just a little bit better. And then there's a few things that obviously Wahoo's missing, like the churning bits there. And in other cases, Garmin Tacx go a bit higher, etc. Like they just did everything just a little bit better. And as a result, it costs just a little bit more, but it's executed super well. Like there's no real issues here. Like even one of the things that was something we kind of realized right at the last second there, which is that in erg mode, it'll automatically follow the course in Zwift using Zwift protocol behind the scenes. And that's just a clever little tie-in that Garmin and Zwift did to basically ensure that as you're going in a course in Zwift, even in erg mode, it'll follow the ups and downs of the gradient, which is something that the other products don't do today.
Yeah, I totally agreed. They just like put everything together so well. And one interesting part of the experience here is that using it with the compatible trainer. So basically there's only two Neo trainers that it can be compatible with, the 3M or the 2T. And this, by the way, is very much the same as the Elite Riser as well as the Wahoo Climb, where those gradient simulators only work with that company's own trainers too, because the gradient simulator talks to the trainer and then the indoor cycling app talks to the trainer to do the simulation type stuff. So there is no cross compatibility with these gradient simulators with other brands trainers out there. But anyways, with the 3M and the 2T, so you actually have the ability to have forward and aft movement with those trainers as well, the forward and backward movement. Now, what's really interesting here is that with the 3M as well as the motion plates on the 2T, using those independently with just a front wheel and their little block that they have for those motion plates, I always felt that experience to be like, it was almost like too quick or too responsive, where it moved too easily, I guess you could say. And the difference here between the Wahoo Kicker Move and the Neo 2T with the motion plates or the 3M is that the Kicker Move has a longer range of fore and aft movement. So what can happen with the Kicker Move is that there's essentially more of a flat spot in the middle where it can kind of float and it doesn't rock back and forth as easily. So it's less of a jarring experience, I guess you could say, where with the 3M, the 2T with the motion plates, the curve is literally like a curve right here, where if you move at all, it's going to come back to the center really, really quickly, where with the Move, you can kind of float there and it kind of just floats without rocking back to the center really, really quickly. Now, what's interesting about the Alpine is that with the Alpine's built-in movement right there, I swear that it changes the dynamics of the ride experience a little bit, where it kind of slows it down. And this is actually the same experience that I found with the Kicker Move plus Climb combo, is that it slowed down that movement where it wasn't quite as jarring. And while I didn't necessarily prefer the movement on the 3M and the 2T with the motion plates independently with a front wheel, I love the experience with the Alpine and the 3M now. Like it just slowed everything down and it made everything a little more subtle, I guess you could say. And it just made for a really, really comfortable experience overall.
Absolutely. No, I think they executed it super well. And I think, the 3M was already one of the best trainers out there. Obviously also the most expensive trainer out there by a stupid margin and a stupid amount. But it is what it is. That's just the Tacx that we know, or the Garmin Tacx that we know in more particular. And so, they executed this super well. And ultimately, I think the thing is with all these, like you said a minute ago, these are all on a per trainer basis. So there are very few people that are going to go out and go, you know what, I'm going to go and switch entire ecosystems from Wahoo to Garmin for the Alpine. This is really designed for someone that already has a 2T or is looking to get the 3M and then wants to add this in there. So you will factually not see anyone with a Kicker Climb and this together, because you can't pair the two together technically, which I guess ultimately gets to it's too bad in a way that not too bad in a way. It is definitely too bad that we continue to see divergence of these standards, right? Like there's so much opportunity in the indoor training space to have standards in these different areas, to not have to have these silos. And the funny thing is that most of these companies would prefer there not to be silos, right? Like if you talk to each one of these companies individually, they all would love to have some sort of standard for gradient simulators that they can just apply across the board. It's really too bad that doesn't exist.
Yep, totally. So yeah. Anyways, that's his Tacx Alpine. Again, I was really surprised I would love it this much, but yeah, I think it's a fantastic product. But it does come at that Garmin Tacx tax. See what I did there? Yeah, with the
Well, to be fair, not just a Garmin tax, but a Garmin tax tariff as well, right? As we
yeah,
saw,
true.
this was
Yeah.
another product that had a lower price point. In this case, included in the press materials with the original
Oh,
price
that's true.
point,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then later on increased at the last minute because of tariffs, right?
Yeah. Super unfortunate. And you know what? The original price, it is a more premium product than the competition out there. So I think it's justifiable for it to be more. But you know, the original price really not all that much higher than the other competition.
No, I think the original price was quite fair. And to be fair, even in this scenario, with the new tariff price, we saw Wahoo increase their prices as well for tariffs, right? So Wahoo increased their kicker climb, kicker climb price. Elite, Elite, to Elite's credit, hasn't bothered to increase their riser price. They're just like, I get the feeling Elite is just kind of like, shrug, we don't care anymore. Someone, at this point they're just gonna run with it. And I think at the end of the day, though, Elite doesn't have a huge presence in the US in the grand scheme of stuff. So my guess is they have a pretty solid stockpile of risers probably already in the US, and they're just going to go through those, and they're going to deal with this problem when they have to deal with it down the road. And they're probably just hoping that eventually, when they do go through that stockpile of products, that tariffs will have untariffed itself.
Yep, totally. All right, so last up, let's talk about the new Garmin Edge MTB bike computer. So this is a purpose-built bike computer for, as the name implies, mountain biking, where it's kind of an interesting computer because I think a lot of us at this point have been expecting an update to the 540 and 840 with like a, whatever, 550 or 850. I don't know who knows with Garmin's naming strategy, it could be like a 545. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like the 7 or the 570 side of it, we just go complete like 1500, right? Just completely out of nowhere. Just anyway.
So with the new Garmin Edge MTB, so you can sort of think of this, funny enough, you sort of can think of this as an Edge like 545, I would like sort of call it. And it's basically a smaller version of an Edge 540 where they kind of ruggedize the entire case. There's like rubberized buttons on the outside, but it more importantly comes with more specific features that are designed for mountain biking. So there's like a new timing gates feature, which is like, it allows you to like create basically like an interval segment that you can just do on the fly. But the more compelling ones are going to be the fact that they have these new downhill and enduro specific sport profiles that have some specific functionality that we'll get to here in just one bit. But they also have a pretty interesting new 5 hertz recording mode with those profiles, where when you're descending in those profiles, it switches to basically recording data plots every 5 seconds versus every second. And just one quick note here is that it's still the accuracy of a dual band satellite chipset inside, but it's just taking more frequent samples. So the accuracy is the same, but the precision is higher, I guess. I think that's...
Yeah, I mean, and I think just to kind of put this in context, the most glaring example for this is just high-speed switchbacks, essentially, right? High-speed, 180-degree type turns, where in the past, you may have a point where those every 1 second points would have cut off that corner, essentially. And now you have a chance to do this, every 1/5 of a second, right? And in theory, to plot those points and have those show up in the fit file. And I'll give Garmin credit. They did a really good job of managing to put this in the existing fit file and not break anything, right? Like all existing platforms out there can read these fit files. And if they have added logic, like we put added logic in the DC Rainmaker analyzer to be able to see these new data points, then they can see them. But if it's an app from 10 years ago, as long as it can read a fit file, which an app from 10 years ago would, it doesn't know anything different. And it's like, okay, fine, I just see the 1 second data points. So it's super clever how they did it. Also, this comes to the Edge 1050 as well. So this is one of the features that the Edge 1050 gets all these features actually, but the Edge 1040 and the 840 and the 540 only get a subset of the new MTB features.
Yeah, and I think that something important to be said there is that there is a limitation, I guess, in terms of the differences with the hardware inside, where the satellite chipsets basically, like, I think there's the newer ones allow for this functionality where the older ones don't. So I don't know. I think it's cool to see that 5 hertz recording. I didn't necessarily see any difference in terms of like the distance collected or anything like that. So I guess the use case for this is I guess I'm not sure about the use case for this. I mean, you get prettier GPS tracks, but it doesn't seem to translate to anything in real life other than that.
Yeah, I would put this maybe in a different context. Me, you, and Shane Miller, GP Llama, spent a lot of time on a group chat text thread digging through files of ours, comparative files, trying to find examples where the dots actually differed, right? Like at the end of the day, we all spent a lot of time looking at tracks from mountain bike to high speed road to you name it, trying to find corners where it's like, oh yeah, that's different. And at the end of the day, I think all of us found a handful of examples out of a lot of hours of riding where we're like, yes, I found one turn. I found one turn in 4 or 5 hours of riding that was noticeably different, right? Now, that's not saying there isn't a use case for this down the road. I think as we had like an offline conversation at one point, and we said, I expect that this 5 hertz technology that Garmin's using here for data recording will become the norm across all of their devices over the next few years, right? And this just becomes another one of Garmin's features that they have there for you behind the scenes to try to upsell you on it. Will there be scenarios where this is useful? Probably. In fact, there's probably scenarios in other applications that Garmin has that they may want to have that higher speed recording rate for higher speed scenarios than cycling can possibly account for, right? So automotive, etc., where it could be more interesting there. But I just don't think it makes a big deal to most people.
Now, in all fairness, I actually did see quite a bit of difference with the corners with the actual downhill testing that I did with this when I actually went up to the bike park. Like, I actually did see a considerable difference with the actual GPS track. So no, in terms of the GPS tracks, I certainly saw a big difference. Like it's like a nice smooth like track, like, on some of the highest speed, really, really tight corners. And, with the 840 that I was using alongside the Edge MTB, it was like dot, where, with the Edge MTB, It was just like this nice smooth plot. But again, like, I just don't know how that translates into other metrics that make a difference, because the distance recorded was like, it was like the same. So I'm not sure, again, like, where that comes into play. So the other portion of this, or the thing that enables this 5 hertz recording, are the new downhill and enduro profiles, where with the downhill profile, as soon as you start descending, well, actually, let me just back up here really quick. With the downhill profile, what they essentially did with the downhill profile is that they brought the same idea as their downhill skiing profile to an Edge bike computer. And I've been wanting this for years, and I've been giving Garmin a lot of feedback and like, all right, I'd love to see this sort of profile. So with the skiing profile on their watches, what happens here is that it uses the altimeter on the watch to detect if you're descending or if you're ascending. And if you're ascending with skiing as well as downhill mountain biking, you're generally going to be on a chairlift going up. So it basically uses the altimeter to essentially pause your activity while you're going up, and it just basically automatically splits out your uphill and downhill times. And it's really, really cool because it'll eliminate the distance traveled on the chairlift. Like, it'll basically eliminate that from your activity file there, where it's only recording the distance going down. And not only that, it actually can split out your runs automatically that you can see in Garmin Connect later. So it's really, really cool. So that's the downhill profile. But with the enduro profile, this is a more manual profile, where with enduro biking, with this, you're pedaling up instead of taking the chairlift up. So you'll be able to break these out, but you actually have to manually trigger your uphill and downhill segments with the enduro. So anyways, that's the explanation of what those profiles do. But during the downhill segments of downhill as well as the enduro, it'll actually switch this 5 hertz recording mode. So the 5 hertz recording mode isn't all the time. It's just on the downhill sections where it's going to be more appropriate, because when you're going uphill, well, going uphill when you're going around a tight switchback or something like that, well, I mean, it can take you 10 seconds to go around a tight switchback going uphill, where it can take you like 2 seconds, when you're going downhill. So that's
you
really
just need
why.
a better e-bike, my friend.
Yeah, I don't own an e-bike. So
See, there's the problem.
So, but hey, but I get to eat a lot more cookies because I don't own an e-bike. And I'm not knocking e-bikes, by the way. I think e-bikes are fantastic.
Neither of us are knocking it.
Yeah, e-bikes are fantastic for a lot of applications. But yeah, anyways, the 5 hertz recording mode only happens on those downhill scenarios.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, in addition to all that, they did add new fork sight features, basically showing when you arrive or come up to a trail junction. There's more detail than you would have had in the past. And that feature actually does go down to the 540, 840, 1040 series. So one of the handful there, as well as the ability to see the triathlon plans. This is a weird one, but the triathlon plans, that feature, you can now see those plans on the Edge MTB, but also see them on the 540, 840, and 1040. So that's something that Garmin's kind of introducing across the board. But the last thing is the hardware bit here, which in addition to the Edge MTB is a new top tube mount that's actually included in the box. So there isn't an out front mount included in the box. I don't think there is, right? No,
there's no puck. There's no puck.
Yeah,
there's no elastic
no puck.
band. Yeah, there is still there's the Garmin MTB mount with the swivel thing.
Right, the little swivel thing, yeah. Mm-hmm. But the Edge MTB top tube mount is there, and that has this, what's the right word? Enjoyable, special, frustrating AF wrapping system that you wrap it to your mount. Now, I would argue when you have it using the bolts onto the top tube, perfect. Like, it's just
so good. Yeah, it's awesome.
So good. But I think what's funny is that all of us, including Shane Bone and GP Llama, use the Garmin like quarter turn mounts all the time on our top tube, the rubber band ones, when we're testing a bunch of bike computers and just need more space to put bike computers. I put them all the time on my top tube, just kind of out of the way, just recording data behind the scenes, sometimes for power meter data, etc. And I'm doing that for like a decade now, no problems. And so I went to use this, and it was just one of those things you're like, it took something so simple, right? You took like this little tiny rubber band mount and made it so vast and bulky and complex to operate with this like strap thing that you've got to weave in and out and up and down and back onto itself. And I wouldn't knock the Garmin people per se, but the Garmin people needed assistance from Garmin people to figure out this mount at the event that we were at, right? Like, to get it actually on the top tube. And every single one of us needed assistance. Not one of us could figure out how to make this thing work the first time at all.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
and even the second or third time.
Yeah, so this strap comes from like a backcountry skiing type scenario or background, where basically the strap, you will like wrap it around your top tube and then you kind of loop it back onto yourself. And then again, there's kind of like looping in and out sort of scenario that happens here. And I understand the theory behind using this kind of strap system, but there's a couple things about it that make it really cumbersome and, quite frankly, a little uncomfortable for you as well. Is that, there's first of all, there's this like kind of notch that you have on the buckle there where you loop it back onto that notch and then you have to loop it back around. So it can definitely take a few tries to get that notch in the correct location where it's not going to be hitting your knee. And funny enough, like the first time I had it on the bike up at the media event, I did not necessarily have it in the correct location. And like I hit my knee on it and I was like, I started to bleed, off of it. So the whole strap situation, it's like, it's going to be extremely secure for sure, because that strap is like robust, but I just don't know why they didn't go with like some sort of like Velcro system on here, because like, I mean, just like a simple Velcro strap, like that would have just been like so darn easy and less bulky, less heavy. I don't know. Like, again, like I love the fact that you can bolt this onto the top tube, like bento box mounts.
That part's great. Yeah.
So awesome. But yeah, the whole strap situation, like I'm probably going to actually look into like some third-party straps or some sort of third-party system to use that, because I love the mount location, but I just don't love that strap. That's basically it.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. I guess then that leads us to kind of like the final question then, probably for this episode, is will we ever see an Edge MTB2, or will this product die? right? So one of the
Well,
big questions that all of us had at this media event, and I think everyone's had since then, is this just seems like a hyper niche product, and the execution of it seems quirky. Not bad. I'm not saying it's a bad product. I think it's actually a really interesting product, but it feels like to me this should have been either an Edge 540 as is, or sorry, 550 or whatever they want to call it, the next version of the smallest computer, the cheapest computer they have, or it should be an Edge 150 or whatever they call the next version of their smallest little thing that everyone keeps asking for.
yeah.
Side note, by the way, I saw some threads and rumors the other day that someone's like, this is the new Edge 150 out there, right? And they show this picture that is 100% an Edge 130 plus. Like you can just zoom in and see it right there. So no, if you've seen that out there as the Edge 150, no, that's just a 130 plus, folks. But back to the question at hand, will the Edge MTB ever get a second version, or will this be too niche for Garmin and they just say nah?
Well, considering that the Edge Explorer got a second version, I would say yes. But going back to the name though, and Garmin's whole naming strategy, I think they named this wrong, like flat out. Like, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, so this is called an Edge MTB, but this is an all around bike computer. Like this can be used for anything and everything. There's no reason to pigeonhole this as a mountain bike computer because it's a fantastic little size. And going back to your Edge 140, 130 plus comments there a second ago, that's the thing is that, okay. And this even goes back to the 570 comment right here too, is that this is like an Edge 200-ish for me, like a, Edge 200-ish, 300-ish for me, where the size is awesome. Like I just love that smaller form factor here. It's not quite as small as the 100 series devices that are out there, but those 100 series devices, those were, well, my favorite bike computers to use for mountain biking because they were just small and out of the way. And quite frankly, they were cheap too. So it's like, if I were to crash and like break one or something like that, it wouldn't be like that big a deal. But the number one thing about those bike computers was the size. And that's one thing I just love about the size. So I think they just chose the wrong name again for this bike computer. I mean, it's a fantastic computer, but in a consumer's mind, when they go to Garmin's website to go buy a bike computer, they're like, oh, I'm a road or gravel cyclist. And then they go to their website, they see, oh, Garmin Edge MTB. That's not for me. Just like they completely like eliminate that from their purchasing, decision right there. So I think there may be an Edge MTB too, but my advice would be to call it an Edge 200 or 300 series, personally.
Yeah. And it's worthwhile noting, in fact, as you talk about like 200, 300 type thing, that they did remove a lot of features from this that are found on the Edge 540. So just to like very quickly blow through all these, there's no search on device and navigation, no training plan, no power guide, no acute load, no cycling ability, no training status, so things like productive, unproductive, etc. No load focus, no race calendar, no primary event, no Climb Pro Explorer. So Climb Pro does work, to be very super clear about this, but Climb Pro Explorer, the ability to see the climbs around you, is not on there, and no Wi-Fi either as well. So there's a lot of things they remove for reasons that make almost no sense to me. But that goes almost to your point of this would seem to be better to stage as a Edge 2, 3, 400. I don't know. They got so many numbers to pick from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
Just ask the Forerunner guys. They'll find a number for you somewhere. I promise you.
Well, I'm not sure if you just saw the Instagram story that dropped this morning from Garmin about the naming on the 570 or 970, but I think they received a lot of feedback regarding the naming, and they put out a social media post to address it.
Where's my phone? Where the heck did my phone go to? Oh, you are my phone. I just looked at your actually looking. My phone is my monitor. Okay.
So yeah, that's the Garmin Edge MTB. Awesome. Actually, you know what? Sorry, one more thing about it. The $399 price tag. So the $399 price tag, this is a tricky one again, where it feature wise, other than the 5 hertz recording and the downhill and enduro profile modes, the 540 is still a better value because you still will get like everything else at $50 less, at least at like full retail price. And I think that
full retail.
Yeah, exactly. But it's even been cheaper at this point. So
yeah, right now it's been $299 for a solar edition and $249 for non-solar, right? So it's like it's been that way for a while. So yeah, that's nuts.
Well, and so I think another thing that they could have done here too is that, if they called it like an Edge 200 or 300 series and didn't include the new top tube mount, that would have reduced the cost quite a bit. And that would have been able to get it at a price point maybe close to possibly under a 540, which I think, again, like I think it would have sold a lot more units, and I think it just would have made a little bit more sense. So yeah, I don't know. Garmin, always fascinating with their naming decisions that they have.
Yeah, I guess that does bring up an interesting question, just to belabor this more. On the top two mount, I'd love to have seen the decision matrix, or maybe the user-based survey they did to decide to include that in there. Because to me, like, Garmin is kind of a king of the accessory upsell. And
that's true.
It seems odd to put that in there, unless that was their way of justifying the $399 price point for what is a couple dollars worth of plastic versus a $349 price point. I don't know.
Now, how much is that? How much is that mount? I can't even remember. The Edge top tube mount. So that is. Are you serious? It's only $29.99. That's cheap. All right. That's you know what?
To be fair, that's Garmin cheap. Right.
No, seriously. I mean, for what this is, $29.99 seems like a very reasonable price for what it is. Like, I mean, I think I certainly have complaints about it, but if you look at honestly, you look at like a K Edge mount or something like that. And while those are very premium mounts out there, those are kind of pricey out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, totally. Yeah. Or if you look at the cost of a Whoop replacement strap, this has way more parts and it costs like half as much.
Well, and it won't stink after 2 months either. So.
That's true. We could mount a Whoop on this though. It has like the whole buckle design and everything.
Oh my gosh, like that's a viral thing right there.
There it is.
All right, I think all right. With that, we are getting a little bit off track, and I think that's probably going to wrap it up for this episode. But for the next episode, we're switching back to wearables, so we need to definitely loop back to the Amazfit Helio Band, which has been just, I don't know, it's kind of been, I would say, the hit of the year so far. They also have their Amazfit Balance 2. I know a couple people commented on our last episode of why we didn't cover that. We generally try to have our in-depth reviews out on a device before we actually talk about it in the podcast. There's some exceptions there, but I'm on the tail end of testing on that Balance 2. I mean, at this point, I think it's a pretty good value, and I think it's a pretty good watch. And then one other watch I'm testing right now is the OnePlus Watch 3, the new 43 millimeter version, the smaller version. And fascinating device. It's not necessarily just a smaller version of the original Watch 3. I'll definitely get into that in my in-depth review. Anything else that we're going to cover in that episode?
I don't know. The summer's still young, right? Depends on when we get around to this. But I think we can go down to our list here of we have literally a category here called episode at some point. And then the next category list on our notes, our collective shared notes, is called episode potential with a bit more. So we could take things from that and put them in that episode too.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see how long we have in our next episode. So yeah, anyways, and I think we're gonna have an in-person episode soonish, I think, too. So that's another one too, soonish too. Yeah, to look forward to. So anyways, as a reminder, if you're watching on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can also check us out on the YouTube side of things. If you do like this podcast or like what we're talking about, make sure to hit that like button and also give us a review on either Spotify, Apple, or even on YouTube as well. So that definitely helps us all out in terms of getting this out there to more people.
Yep. Thanks all for listening or watching, and have a good one.